Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Paul and I started thedicey-review.com, and I was going to make a quick video today to show you guys how to play Roll for the Galaxy, and hopefully it won't take too long and you'll be able to learn it fairly easily, because the rule book can be a bit intimidating. So I've got it set up right now for a 2-player game. As you can see on the table, I've got a kind of a computer player over there that normally my wife plays, but today I've only got 2 players set up. It can be played from 2 to 5. But I've got the table set up kind of how it's going to look, and I'll kind of go through everything and explain why it's set up the way it is and what you can do with all these pieces. At the start of the game, you have your little player tableau down here, which this board will be kind of where you put all your dice and you can put stuff that you're working on. And on the top up here, this is where you'll be working on building your empire. You're supposed to be building the most buildings and settling planets and discovering technologies, all this cool stuff. And this is where you build things. As you build throughout the game, you'll expand and put more tiles up here. And the game, you're supposed to get the most victory points, which the more games you play, you're going to learn that's the most games. You're trying to get the most victory points. And on this one, how you get victory points is you build tiles. So to start out the game, everyone will have a starting race, like an alien race or a type of world that they start out with. And then you'll also have an additional home world right here that you start out with as well. And you randomly draw these at the start of the game, and everybody gets one based on that. So, and these count towards your ending scoring as well. So to end the game, the first person to get 12 of these tiles, which this counts as 2, and this counts as 1, or the first person to empty the victory points, these little tokens right there count as victory points. And the first person to do that will win. So to start off the game, you're going to have 5 dice. Everybody has 2 white dice that start off here in their citizenry, and this is where your dice go when you've done an action, when you've completed something with them. When you use them, your workers go back into your citizenry, and you can buy them again later and bring them out of retirement. And then you'll also have 3 dice in your cup here, and you may get extra starting dice depending on what kind of worlds you get, and I'll go over that in a second. So, but this is the basic setup, and then after you do that, you draw your worlds, and like this one, for instance, will give me an extra yellow die in my citizenry at the start of the game. So I would go ahead and I would grab an extra yellow dice, and I would put it in my citizenry. And then this one right here, as part of my other starting world, it gives me another yellow die in my citizenry as well. So total, I would start off with, I guess, 7 dice, and I would just have to buy these later to use them. So I don't use these at the start, but they're available to me if I want to buy them later. And then the computer player over here, she has, let's see, a couple blue dice that get added. So this one gets added on the world as a good, so you put this one right there. And then this one goes directly into her cup. And after you do that, you're ready to start to play the game. The only other thing that you do before you start is you've got your starting world and your starting little civilization here, and then you also have 2 tiles that you're working on as well. You each draw 2 tiles from the bag randomly. And all these tiles are double-sided. So one side is a technology and the other side is a world. And so you'll try and develop one or the other. And you can pick whenever you draw if you want to go for the technology or you want to go for the world. This one's kind of tough because this one takes 6 dice or more to complete. And this one only takes 1 die to settle. And you can tell that by the number up in the top left. And we'll go into detail into kind of what the actions do in a second here. So now that everything's set up, you're ready to go. And you put your dice in, you know, wherever the tile tells you to, and then up in the top here you have the 5 different phase tiles that might get activated, and I'll talk about those in a second. So to start your turn, everybody's going to roll all at once. So you'll take your cup and you'll roll your dice and roll behind your screen, and you'll be left with a certain roll. So down here I've rolled my 3 dice. And people are going to take the dice kind of based on what symbols they get, and these all mean different things, and I can talk about that in a second. But the basic thing you're going to do is you're going to pick one of your die, and it can be a wild card. So even if you roll this one and it's a diamond, you can put it up here on your little phase strip somewhere and activate whichever phase you want to to happen in the game. So say I rolled a diamond, but I wanted to activate the settle action and settle a world. What I would do is I would take this die, and I would put it on the settle action, and then that would be the action that I activate. That would be the phase that I activate this round. So whenever everybody pulls their screens up, this action would get activated, this phase would get activated in the round, and that means that everybody would get a chance to do that if they've rolled certain things or if they've assigned workers there. So that would be the only die that I can use to activate a phase. You get to pick one die per round. The other thing that you can do if you want to is you can dictate that a die do a certain thing. So say if I rolled 3 dice and none of them came up as what I wanted them to be, I could take one of these die that I didn't really want to use, say I rolled a ship and I didn't want to use the ship action. I could put this die up here and use it to dictate another die, and this one could change into anything it wants to. Kind of similar to how you would make this die up here wild. This one can be anything that you want it to be. So say you wanted to do a settle action and a develop action, which would be this little diamond right here. You can make this one wild up here and put it onto this phase strip and activate any phase that you want to. And then you can use this die to dictate that another die be something else, like this one right here, and you can say, okay, this one's going to be a develop action, even though we rolled it as an explore. And that's kind of how you would do your actions, and you would lift your screen, and then everybody would reveal what they've activated. And then the phases that you activate, like this settle right here, would then get turned over. And that means that this round, that phase would be activated and people could take that action. If a phase token doesn't get turned over, then it can't be used this round. People can't do that action. Even if, say for instance, I assigned this guy as a diamond, if that one didn't get activated, since that phase might not get turned over this round, this guy may have to go back into my cup. Because if you can't use one of your die that you've assigned under the phase strip down here, they have to go back into your cup and be used next round, which isn't the end of the world, but you'd like to be able to use your dice if you could. So, that being said, that's kind of how you do your actions. I'm going to go ahead and explain what the actions do and what they mean. So, the first action you have is the explore action. And if you are going to explore, you can either do one of two things. You can take your dice and you can use them. So anytime you explore, or anytime you do an action, you will use your dice. And that means that they will go back into your citizenry. So the two things that you can do when you explore is you can either explore for a tile, and to do that, you would just simply take your die, you would use it, you would say it's going to go into my citizenry. So it goes in there, and then you reach into this big black bag that they include with the game, and you put all your tiles in here. And these tiles, like I said, are double-sided, so you can either use them as a technology or an alien world that you can explore. So I would draw out a tile, and I would say, okay, I've drawn this one, and I can either do one of two things. I can either develop it as a technology, and this allows me to reassign more workers if I want to, so it gives me more flexibility to kind of negate the randomness of the rolls. Or on the other side, oh wow, it's a 6-cost alien planet. Now, the alien worlds are nice because they're rare materials, the yellow. And so sometimes you may want to do this one because this one says I get $3 when I place this world and I get a yellow die in my cup, which would be really nice. So when you explore, you can either pick which side you want to do, and then you put it down in your little tableau to work on. So if there's no technology in your tableau, like if there's space right here where you can go ahead and you can put something down, then you just put it down, and that becomes your active technology that you're working on. Say for instance though, there was already a technology there that I'm working on and I want to still keep this one and work on it later. You can do one of two things. You can put this underneath and put that right there. Or before you go exploring, say you don't want to work on this development anymore, and you say, I don't really like this one anymore, I just want to abandon it. So what you can do is you can abandon this tile. You can take it from your tableau and you can put it up here underneath the explore phase tile, and then you can draw an extra tile for every one that you abandon. So say I abandoned 3 technologies, I could draw 4 tiles total, because you draw 1 for exploring, and then you draw as many as you abandoned. So in this case, if I just abandoned 1, I would be able to draw 2 tiles for 1 explore action, and pick whichever one I want. So that's kind of a nice thing that you can do if you're not too happy with what you're working on currently. The other thing that you can do if you want to explore is you can stock your explore dice for money. And this is a very simple action that will help you buy more dice at the end of the round. So say for instance, I don't want to explore for a new tile. I just say, I just want to stock this guy. So you put him into your citizenry. Sorry, let me grab making the right side there. You put him into your citizenry and you get $2 for every die that you stock. So I would go up to $3 total, and that would give me 2 more galactic credits here, or space dollars, that I could use to buy dice. At the end of the round, you can buy 1 die for every dollar that you spend. And you actually have to buy them if you have the money and the dice are available. So, say for instance I had 5 credits at the end of the round, I would have to buy all 5 of my workers if I had the ability to. If not, then say that I had 5 die, or $5, and there were only 2 die available, I would only have to buy 2, because there are only 2 that I can buy. It's just something that the game makes you do. You have to take actions if you have the ability to, for the most part. The next thing that you can do is you can develop. And this is useful because it allows you to build your technologies that you're working on. So, say I had rolled my dice, and they came out as, let's change one. It came out as 2 develop and an explore action. What I could do is I could make this explore die wild, and I could activate the develop phase by putting this on a strip up here. And this is, once again, you can activate 1 die per round and make it a wild card basically, and activate whatever phase you want to. And that's kind of nice because it helps you to negate the randomness of dice rolling, which is one reason I really like this game. Then you could go ahead and say, these guys, since I already rolled develop, I'm going to make them developers, and I'm going to try and use that action this round. And the nice thing is that you've assigned it to the develop phase, so it gets activated, so you know this is going to happen. And other people may activate that phase as well, and that's not a problem. If somebody else activates it, you can still use that action, and so can they. But when your turn comes around, you would take these 3 dice, and you would put them on your current tile that you're trying to develop. And then since this costs 3, that would get developed. These guys would go into your citizenry, and then you get to add this tile to your little civilization that you're building up here. And that's how you get points. At the end of the game, what's in this number up here is worth the victory point. So this would be worth 1, 1, 1, 3, and you get more points that way. And then also, the more tiles you build, the closer you are to ending the game. But that's how you activate your develop workers. That's how you develop your technologies. And say for instance this world or this technology only cost 2 die. You could have taken one of your developed die that you rolled and activated it, and then put this die down here to activate that. And then you could have put this guy over here just in case somebody activates the explore phase. Maybe you'll get an extra action that'll help you out. So you just have to use as many die as it costs to activate that technology. And if it costs more than this, so say for instance that tile we drew earlier that was 6+, like for instance this is 6+. Say if I was trying to get this one done and I only had 3 dice, you would put your 3 dice on here, and at the end of the round you could either leave them on there to keep working on that development, or you can recall them and try again next turn. So if you don't have enough to build something, you can leave them on there and work towards it on future rounds. The next thing that you can do is you can develop worlds. And this is exactly the same, you can settle worlds, sorry. And this is exactly the same as developing something, developing technology. What you would do is say I roll my dice, and I got 1 settle and a produce and a ship. What you can do is, since my planet only costs 1 to settle, I could make sure to get that one done by activating that phase with my settle die, and then I could make these guys a produce and a ship. And in that way, I know that I'm going to activate this planet because it only costs 1. And so whenever I activate this, I put this guy over here, and since it costs 1, this planet gets settled, and I put it up here in my little civilization up there. And it's the same way with the technology as it is with settling a planet. If it costs five settlers, you can put down 3 and then do 2 later, or you can roll 5 in one round if you can get that many, and put them down there. It just costs however many dice as is up in the top left corner. So the next thing that you can do is you can produce. And we rolled one of these produce die, symbols on this dice right here. And this allows one of your workers, one of your die, to become a good on a planet. So say for instance, I've got a yellow planet that I started out with. Say I had bought one of my yellow die and I was going to roll it, and I rolled something that could be used as a produce. So this is a wild card. This is a wild symbol. This can be anything. And the yellow die and some of the purple die and blue die, some of the other die, I don't know if the blue actually does, but some of them have wild card sides. And this one can be anything. So say I rolled this and I wanted to produce something. What I could do is I could either put this down underneath the planet, or underneath the action on the phase strip here, or I could just activate the phase, whichever one you want to do. And that means that this guy would become a good on a world. Now, when you're sending somebody to become a good on a world, you pay attention to the world's color, and that gives you either more points, or you can get more money depending on what color the world is. So yellow is the rarest, and it goes. You can look at your little screen here. It tells you all about the different colors that you can choose. Yellow is the rarest. It's the most money. Let me see here. Green is the next, brown, and then blue. So I've got a yellow world out here. It's the rarest world. It gives me the most money if I trade, or I can consume my die later when I ship, and it'll give me victory points. But what you do is, if you produce, this die becomes a good on a world, and the only caveat to producing something is that you have to produce on a world that has a color. You can't use gray, for instance. So this world right here, normally if this were a blue or a green or a brown world, I would be able to send a die out here to become a good on this world, but since it's gray, I can't do that. But since this world is yellow, it has a color, I can send a good to it, and I've sent this die out here to become a good, and it can only hold 1 good per world, so that's the only other restriction. Other than that, you can send any die color that you want out here to become a good, as long as the world is a color of either yellow, blue, green, or brown. And then that die sits on that world as a good until you ship it home. So say for instance I've put this good on this world, I've produced on this world, and say next round I'm rolling these dice, and I've rolled these 3 faces. Well, since I rolled a wild card, I can make this anything I want to. And I could, if I wanted to, make it a wild card anyway by just activating a phase. So say I wanted to take this card, or this dice, and make it a shipping action. This is the last thing that you can do. When you ship something, you can either, like I said, trade it for money, or you can consume the good for victory points. So what I would do is I would take this die, and I would grab these 2 and put them in my citizenry, and that means that I have shipped the good. Now when I ship the good from a world back into my citizenry, what that means is I can either, like I said, trade it for money, or I can consume it for victory points. Now if you trade it for money, the world determines how much you get. So say for instance I have a yellow world right here. If I trade it for money, I get $6, no matter what color the die is that's on the world. It doesn't matter the color of the die if you're trading it, it just matters the color of the world. So this world is yellow, it would mean I would get $6. And I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that would give me 9 credits for that round. if I was where I was previously. If I had a brown world, I would get 4. If I had a green world, I would get 5, 3 for a blue, etc. So that's what you do if you trade a good. Now, if you consume a good for victory points, you get bonuses based on the color of the dice. So, say for instance, I've got a yellow world out here and I put a yellow good. Since the good that's on the world matches the color of the world, that would give you an extra victory point. And if the die that I'm using to ship is the same color as the world as well, I get another victory point. So I can get a total of 3 max per good that I consume. Say for instance, I just had one white die that was on this world as a good. I would get 1 victory point if the color didn't match the world and the shipping didn't match the world. So in this situation, I would only get 1 victory point because I'm shipping one good that doesn't match the color, and I'm using a ship that doesn't match the color as well of the world. Say for instance, I used a yellow die to ship this home white die home. Since the yellow die that I'm using to ship matches the color of the world, I would get 2 victory points because I would get 1 simply because I'm shipping a good, and 2 because the color of the shipping die is the same as the world. And then once again, if both dice match the color of the world, then you would get 1 for shipping a good, 1 for the good being the same color as the world, and 1 for the shipping die being the same color as the world as well. So you can, like I said, get a max total of 3 victory points if all of the colors match the world that you're trying to ship. A turn round may look like this. So say we're starting off the game, and my other player over here, which normally I play with my wife Lacey, she would roll her dice behind her screen. I would roll my dice behind my screen. And say for instance I came up with this roll, which I've got 2 development dice and 1 exploration die. So say on my tableau down here, I've got a planet that only costs 1. So maybe my first turn, I'd want to settle that planet. So remember, you can take 1 die and make it anything that you want to and activate a phase. So I think I'm going to activate the settle phase and put this die up here and make it a settler, even though it started off as a development die. So I'm going to activate the settle phase, and that assures me that since I have a 1-cost planet, I will be able to activate that phase and settle that planet this turn. So that's going to be done. The other thing I can do is I can put these guys down here and just use them as what they were rolled as if those phases get activated. Or if I wanted to, I could use one of these die to dictate what the other die does. You know, if I wanted to say produce or try and ship something. But there has to be a good on a world for you to be able to ship, so it wouldn't do me much good to do that right now. So I think for this round, I would just say I want to go ahead and settle. I want to possibly explore and then develop if these phases get activated. And then all the players, once they say they're ready, would lift their screens, and the phases that were activated would be turned over. So say for instance, my other player over here had it activated. Since she has a good on a world, maybe she wanted to activate shipping. So you pull up your screens, and then the good that you have that you've activated here, the phase that you've activated gets turned over. So my phase right here would get turned over, and then my opponent activated the shipping phase, so that one gets turned over. And then in a 2-player game, you actually have a computer player to help activate more phases, and all that is just 1 white die in a cup. You roll that, and this one rolled as a shipping action. That one's already been activated, so nothing else would happen. And then gameplay would go from there. So maybe my opponent would ship her good home, she would get points or maybe money from that. I would activate my settle action right here, and I would go there and activate this planet. I would start adding that to my empire, and then gameplay goes like that. One other quick note to mention is that, remember I mentioned since these phases didn't get activated, these dice don't get used. and they go back into my cup. And I would get to use them again next round. Then at the end of the round, after everyone's taken their turn, you have to buy your dice again. That you can buy dice that you want to use. So, say I had not gotten any extra money for this round. I would only have $1 that I could use. So any dice that are in my citizenry, I could buy one. And I would buy that one dice, or that one die, and I would put it in my cup, and I could use it this next round. And then at the start of the next round, your money resets to 1. You always have $1. So you keep on playing until there are either 12 tiles in someone's tableau, or all of the victory point tokens, which they look like this, or all of these victory point tokens are gone. And then you count up the points, and whoever has the most wins. That's basically how you play it. So I'm probably going to do a video later kind of talking about what my thoughts are about this game, and maybe give a little bit of a review. But that's the basic gameplay. And if you have any questions, you can email me at thedicey@gmail.com. And as always, you can leave comments on my webpage as well. And I'll post this on my YouTube page as well, the Baron Von Terror gaming page. And you can leave comments on there or send me private messages. So until next time, guys, I'll see you at the table.